And we are live. Welcome back to Ask Dr. Vincent After Our Edition with me, Dr. Vincent, and my partner, my co-founder, and my almost friend, Christian. How are you today, Christian?
I am very well, thank you.
I actually am really excited about today's topic because I have been doing maybe like 8 interviews about this topic in the past month.
But before we get into that, I'd just like to to say that someone actually gave me a note online.
A few people.
I've got a few notes.
Yes.
And I'm sure they're probably from your mum or something. But I've got to apparently stop interrupting you.
I think they made, sometimes when I'm explaining something, I really do believe that it's nothing malicious towards you. It's just that they wanted to hear the explanation. But I, for one,
I know no one wants to hear from me, but
I, for one, take your interruptions, quote unquote, as very entertaining. So it's really important that you keep doing that.
Okay, well, I'll acknowledge, but I have to acknowledge the note, and I'll try and restrain myself from interrupting you when you're explaining something scientific.
Speaking of feedback and questions from our listeners,
Your mum.
Somebody actually asked how old Christian actually is. And I always said that age is but a number. It is about how you act rather than the number of years that you have lived through. And I do firmly believe that, because what was the thing that you told me about Gen X? They're actually people who are 50 years old, who look like 30 and act like 15?
That's exactly right.
And in the age of agelessness, I think it's really important that what we feel inside reflect on our appearance, our mobility and activity, as well as the way that our cognitive functions work, because I do firmly believe that it is really not about the age. The other day I was just reading about a grandma or great grandma actually, who was 91 years old and finished a marathon. And that makes me reflect onto my own grandma, who is 83 years old and still very active, doesn't walk with walking stick or any type of assistance. She's really, really fit. She dances every day. She actually has a TikTok, so if you want to follow her, I've featured her the other day on my Insta story. So when you follow us, Dr. Vincent, you're not only receiving all the sciencey, nerdy stuff. I literally just changed my Instagram bio, Christian, to Dr. Vincent, Doc of all trades.
Well, that's incredibly true. Having known you for the amount of time that I've known you, I can confirm you are definitely the doctor of all trades.
Well, thank you so much. That means a lot to me. But today, I want to talk about the topic that I have been asked about for like 8 times, as I said before, by the ABC radio stations, both national and also state-based. I have also talked about this with the 7 News people, and
you were interviewed today on this.
Yes, I just spoke to 5AA team people, which is the radio that broadcasts from.
So this is the hot topic.
This is a hot topic, and the most recent breaking news out of this topic was that the state of California just filed a lawsuit to 10 food manufacturers when it comes to the detrimental health effect that the products, the ultra-processed foods that they produce and manufactured, have onto the population of Californians.
So that's what we're talking about today. We're talking about ultra-processed food.
Yes. And
while acknowledging some of the laws in California are a bit wacky, though.
Yes, you're talking about the Proposition 65, I think,
yeah,
that says that basically water and everything barbecued can cause cancer, which, I mean, that's the extreme form of the law. However, we have to acknowledge that there are some staggering statistics when it comes to ultra-processed food and our diet. And there are several things that I listed here when it comes to ultra-processed food in Australia. And here I go. Ultra-processed foods now make up around 42% of energy intake in average Australian diet, which means that that's effectively half of what Australians eat. Among grocery purchases, Australian household per capita purchases of ultra-processed foods amounted to 56.4% of total energy purchase, so more than half. And the projection shows that the consumption of ultra-processed foods are on the rise by 18% by 2030, all while the consumption of fruit and vegetables are at all-time low.
Okay, but let's break this down, because we only ever hear from people, eat more whole vegetables, eat more this, eat more that, sort of thing. And no one likes to be preached to. And you just said that, these ultra-processed foods make up, a very high percentage of our diets. But let's start with, what is an ultra-processed food and where did they come from?
So the term ultra-processed food, as opposed to just processed food, it was coined by Nova. So Nova is a scientific journal article publisher that published scientific journal in science, pharmaceutical, biology, basically anything that has to do with life sciences. They coined.
So this is a legit thing.
It is a legit thing. It is very well known and very reputable source. This is basically like the Cambridge or Oxford Dictionary for Science Society. So they coined the term ultra-processed food in 2009, which basically sets out a set of criteria when it comes to judging whether a food item is ultra-processed or just processed. So,
but we've had ultra-processed foods before 2009. It just like start in 2009.
Yes, it's just that before Nova coined this term in 2009, people just consider food as in the raw form, which is what they call the natural state. Things like raw milk, for example, rice, tubers, fruits and vegetables, and processed food, things like pasteurized milk, cheese, wine, beer, or jam. And I'm not sitting here and telling people that food processing is at all bad. As a matter of fact, life expectancy went from really poor to like 80 years, 90 years because of food processing. Because food processing eliminates bacteria, contamination, viruses, pathogens, yeast, and mold. Food processing also helps our body to digest food and absorb nutrients from food. Food processing also helps to address nutritional gaps when it comes to dietary needs. Say, I'm talking about fortification. When milk was fortified with calcium and vitamin D, it helps to increase the consumption of these essential nutrients, the whole nation by the population. So it's not all bad. But when it comes to ultra processed food, and I feel that I theorize this, I don't know this, I was not on the board of Nova, but I theorized the reason why they had to come with this new terminology, ultra processed foods, is to make a distinction between processing of food that is generally good and a processing of food that has gone above and beyond what commonly known as cooking.
So what's the tipping point? When does something become ultra processed?
Strictly by definition, Nova set out a few criteria, things like mass produced, things like the additional.
But like milk is mass produced.
I'm not finished yet.
Okay.
This is the interruption. The second point is that the additional food additives, they are not normally found in the kitchen. Things like stabilizer, artificial coloring, artificial flavor, artificial sweetener, artificial preservative. And number three, it is what people call as an empty calorie, low in fiber, high in sugar, high in bad fat and oils, but low in antioxidants and vitamins and minerals. They are naturally found in this kind of food. Say, for example, when we talk about crisps or chips, whatever you fancy the term, they're basically potato that has been sliced, processed, fried, and packed. The tipping point when it comes, when these potatoes become ultra-processed food is when, yes, they are mass-produced, but milk is mass-produced too. But number two, there are a lot of additives that are being put onto the natural or raw form of the product to ensure convenience, longevity in terms of shelf life, shelf stable, to impart a flavor. So the difference between the potato chips that you cook at home versus potato chips that you buy in the package form.
Do people cook potato chips at home? Do people make their own potato chips?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I mean, for you who have followed me for a long time,
we're not talking about fries. We're talking about like the chips you buy, Smith's chips and stuff like that.
Sure. And that's the reason why certain brands call it like kettle cook or batch cook, is because that's how you fry it. You deep fry it at home. The difference between cooking it at home versus buying in the pack is that when it's processed and sold in a pack, there are a lot of additives that are being put onto the chips to give you that extra umami taste, extra crispness. It lasts longer, high in sodium, low in fiber, additional sugar to caramelize the color, additional preservative to make sure that the fat that they spray onto the chips before they spray the flavoring remains good and not rancid. All of these stuffs are affecting the physiological of the food and how these ultra processed foods interact with our body.
So is any like chip that you buy in the supermarket ultra processed?
They're all ultra processed.
They're all ultra processed.
So anything that has a shelf life beyond what you can achieve in the kitchen, they are ultra processed. But
doesn't that mean like everything in a packet then is ultra processed? Because everything's got a preservative in it.
Well,
surely
not really. Say for example, UHT milk. A lot of people have the misconception that the reason why it can last for long because it has preservative being added to it. No, ultra processed. UHT milk stands for ultra high temperature. So the processing utilizes heat, ultra high heat, to kill off the bacteria. And because of the packaging technology, like Tetra Pak, which pack the milk in the aseptic condition, then there is no external bacteria or viruses or microorganisms being introduced to the milk. So the milk is pure in the way that it hasn't been altered except that heat has been applied. So that type of food, it is not considered ultra processed food. It's processed food. But this is the interesting thing. Tofu is actually ultra processed food because it changes the not only physical but also chemistry.
But tofu's been made for like 1,000 years, and it's an ultra processed food from 1,000 years ago.
When you make tofu at home, you are actually using either acid or vinegar.
No one makes tofu at home, by the way. But anyway,
this is another thing that people are commenting about, because just because you don't make tofu at home, I make tofu at home.
I don't believe anyone makes tofu at home. Anyway,
as a matter of fact,
no. Tell us your tofu story. Go on.
As a matter of fact, it is actually very cheap to make tofu at home. You add either vinegar as a coagulant to make the protein coagulate or thicken to separate from the liquid or watery part. And number two, you sometimes use a magnesium salt or nigari. That's the name of the salt to do the coagulation. However, when it comes to mass produce, so remember, you have a food item has to tick 2 out of the 3 criteria. The first one is mass produce, in the factory, not in the kitchen. Number 2, the additional ingredients or artificial ingredients that being put into it, and number 3, the empty calorie. So while tofu doesn't have empty calories, when tofu is mass produced, that ticks number 1. Number 2, the additional ingredients like flavoring, colorant, clarifier, thickener, and preservative makes tofu that is being produced in a mass capacity and you buy it from supermarket tips over to ultra processed food.
But is it bad for you?
Not necessarily. As a matter of fact, I always say this, that our body does not fear processing. Our body fears inflammation. So I think you asked me this question before when we were preparing for this episode. Are all ultra processed foods bad for you? I would say 99% of it is they're all bad for you. Tofu is the 1%. It's not all bad, but generally speaking, when we look into what Australians put into their basket that fulfill that criteria of being ultra-processed foods, they're all stuff that are high in sugar. Biscuits, they're high in sodium. Chips, they're high in additional unnecessary ingredients like thickener, stabilizer, flavoring, colorant. And we all learned that just because they call it natural, it's not always natural, because under our law, natural identical, meaning that the substance they are made in the lab, but chemically the same or identical with the one that's naturally occurring in nature, they can call it natural. But it's not necessarily natural because they can make it in the lab and call it natural.
Okay. So if we're picking on like snack foods, which is the easiest thing to pick on in terms of ultra-processed food, are there degrees like across the ultra-processed spectrum? Are there ones that are severely ultra-processed versus ones that are a little bit ultra-processed or something?
So I would say things like popcorn. So popcorn and cornflake, they all come from corn. Yeah, different type of corn, popping kernel and normal kernel. However, I don't consider popcorn as ultra processed. Sure, again, we're talking about air pop popcorn that is not microwave. It's not something that you buy in a pack, flat pack, you put it in the microwave and then it pops itself, and it contains hydrogenized fat and all of this stuff that makes it ultra processed. But if you buy naturally produced popcorn, meaning air pop, or popcorn that is just naturally flavored with butter instead of butter flavored popcorn, in my book, they don't fall into the ultra processed category. But cornflakes, for example, the breakfast cereals, they are ultra processed because it's been sprayed with additives. It's been processed to the point where the glycemic index of the food, meaning that how much simple sugar in this end result of the food processing, is so high to the point where it is considered high in sugar. And not only that, they add sugar to it in the form that your body will have a really hard time to control the appetite. Have you ever wondered when you open a pack of chips or a chip of Pringles, you feel that you're being compelled to finish the entire chip, the entire pack?
That's how they design it, isn't it? That's food science, isn't it? The application of food science.
Perhaps not initially, but when they see that people are actually eating that way, the packaging becomes bigger and bigger. And even when they say that, okay, the serving size is 2 out of this little pack, believe you me, people are not actually stopping at half point. Most of the time, people eat more. And the reason is because it really disrupts and confuses our own hormonal system and signaling when our gut and our brain are communicating to each other. So it loses the sensitivity to the fullness hormone, leptin, or the hunger hormone,
growth. And this is what ultra-processed foods do as opposed to raw foods or processed foods.
Yes, exactly. So this is what I'm talking about just now, that our body does not fear processing. As a matter of fact, processing food is good for our nutritional need and requirement. There are some food items, for example, tapioca. They are not readily consumed by a human in its raw form. As a matter of fact, it is actually toxic.
That's a root, isn't it?
That's a root. That's a tuber. So it is actually toxic. Food processing denatures and basically cancels out the toxin either by soaking, fermenting, or cooking. So food processing have saved lives, prolonged longevity, and increased nutritional profile. It is the inflammation that is caused by ultra-processed food that our body can't handle, or can handle less. So I'm not saying that when you eat a pack of chips, suddenly your body goes into a wildfire of inflammation. No, the key word here is long-term as well as proportion. When you read things like 50% of Australians' diet are basically ultra-processed food, that is the concerning part.
Yeah, so because I sort of treat this as a nutritional consult, a personal nutritional consult each podcast.
And remember, Christian doesn't make his own tofu.
I don't think anyone makes their own tofu. Anyway, I just want to ask the question, getting back to chips, so you have like the normal like potato chip things, and they might be salt and vinegar and salt and whatever flavoring or whatever, and then you have things like Pringles, which actually aren't slices of potato. That's something different.
Yes, they make slurry of potato.
Is that more ultra processed?
It is more ultra processed.
It is more ultra processed. And then you also have things like my actual favorite snack is a Cheezle.
It's extruded snack. That's what it is.
Is that even more ultra processed?
Perhaps not more than Pringles are, because Pringle chips are, which in terms of design, food processing, as well as engineering, is very, very, very genius, because it was designed so that all the chips stack together without it being broken. So instead of filling the bag with air, Pringles chips were designed to be able to stack and protect each other from impact without needing 50 or 60% of the packaging.
But they're not great for you.
They're not great for you. So instead of potatoes being sliced, what they do is that they use potato starch, make a slurry, and extrude it out or shape it into that powder.
And I'm guessing they put additives and stuff like that in the slurry.
Yes, of course. Otherwise, how can you get all chips being uniformly white?
Okay, understand. So if I was going to have like one of these snack things, they're all pretty much ultra processed. What am I doing? Am I sticking to popcorn, or can I have a bag of chips?
I think, and I say this because this is what I do, and guilty as charged, I cannot eliminate 100% of ultra processed food from my diet, because I'm a parent, I run a small business, I do this, I am also science communicator, I'm on radio, I'm on TV, I write things. So I'm time poor. Unfortunately for us and me and a lot of people in my position, is that ultra processed food offer convenience that our kitchen, our raw food and normal food processing do not give us. So it's almost like you have something's got to give. What I'm saying is that if you do the 80-20 rule, 80% being good and 20% is when you use convenience to fill in the gaps or satisfy your hunger or craving for like chips or ham or bacon or things that
is bacon ultra processed?
Yes, bacon.
Oh my gosh.
Ham, any small goods, so pepperoni.
But they've been making this stuff for centuries.
Yes. Forgive me. I choke on my own words. The difference is that when people are making pepperoni in Italy for many, many decades ago, it takes them 12 to 18 months to age, to develop the flavor, to dry, and to preserve itself. It is a form of food preservation. However, when you buy ham from your supermarket, they are not aged for 18 months. The process is being accelerated using chemicals, the addition of nitrites, instead of letting the flavor develop itself, instead of letting the meat get a bit darker because of oxidation. They put nitrates, they put artificial antioxidant to whiten the meat, to make the meat looks more palatable, and develop the same flavor through the additional flavoring agent to mimic the natural development of flavor that takes 18 months.
Yeah, so let me ask you the really important questions. Like, is chocolate ultra processed food?
This is going to be a very fine line. In my opinion, chocolate is not, but chocolate compound is. So there's a difference. So chocolate, as you know it, is not all the same. For example, Tim Tam in Indonesia tastes different to Tim Tam here, because Tim Tam in Indonesia use chocolate compounds, which is basically a compound of cocoa butter, sugar, a little bit of chocolate liqueur, and then this is basically how they make white chocolate, for example. So, but instead of not having the chocolate liqueur at all, they add the chocolate liqueur. Chocolate is not something that's supposed to be reconstituted and called compound. Chocolate is actually a liqueur, a mixture of chocolate liqueur and cocoa butter in the natural form that has just been extracted, heat it up and make it a slurry, and then repurpose in the form of pellets, for example, or blocks. So there are two different types of chocolate: chocolate compound and chocolate in the natural form, without it being altered.
Okay, so which is the one that most people eat?
In Australia, we're very lucky. Majority of the time, and please correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not up to date with the food regulation. But as I know it, it has to contain a certain amount of cocoa mass to be able to call your product chocolate. So all these chocolate compound product, they have to be called chocolate flavor. So your ice cream topping, they are like $1 or $2. They're not chocolate ice cream topping.
And they're ultra processed.
Chocolate flavor.
And ultra processed.
They're ultra processed.
Okay.
The same thing with cheese. So your brie, for example, your aged cheddar and Parmesan cheese, they are processed food. However, your Kraft singles, they are ultra processed cheese. They're not even supposed to call themselves cheese. If you read the final labeling or fine name, is actually processed cheese.
You've got a whole story about that sort of rubbery cheese stuff, and we need to do an episode on that. But just covering off chocolate, because that's important. White chocolate, that's ultra processed.
They're ultra processed. They're not there. There's no such thing as white chocolate. White chocolate is basically chocolate compound that doesn't have the cocoa mass. So they're just cocoa butter, sugar, and additives.
Okay, well that's good because I don't like white chocolate. How about something like coffee?
Caffeine powered and apple powered. So coffee is the same thing with chocolate. When it comes to just the normal coffee that the coffee beans has been extracted out or taken out from the coffee berries and then aged, dried, roasted, and then being made into an espresso, for example, or long black or your latte, they are considered processed food. But when it comes to your coffee flavored drink, or when it comes to coffee flavored ice cream, those, in my book, they are considered ultra processed food. And as a matter of fact, it's really interesting that you mentioned coffee because you never know who's watching this podcast when we broadcast it from our little studio. You know, one company that I actually use their coffee before they even reach out to me is called Cofex. They are based in Melbourne. They are a boutique coffee roaster, which I love because it means that they can control the quality. It's the same thing. Our face cream, our body cream, they are made in small batches. And that's how we can control the premium, good quality of our cream. The same thing with coffee roaster. When they batch roast the coffee, they can pay a lot more attention to the flavor profile, the crema, the texture.
Okay, but give them a shout out. Who are they? Sorry.
So the company is called Cofex, and
you drink their coffee.
I drink their coffee.
Okay,
and not only that, they actually, which your dad is actually drinking their coffee too, because they send us. They're very generous. They send us a pack of coffee beans, coffee, ground coffee, Turkish style coffee. And we have been really grateful because I love their coffee.
Okay, well, it wasn't the reason I brought up coffee, but I'm glad we've.
No, I know.
I'm glad.
I just want to mention that because I have to say that between the coffee and activated phenolics, I really don't need anything else. Obviously, water.
Although I think I'm drinking too much coffee at the moment. I'm drinking like 2 or 3 cups a day because I've been working really hard. But anyway, that's me.
Please refer back to the second episode of this podcast, Addiction.
Yeah, okay. And the final one I really need to cover off with you because this is ultra important as well. I don't know, the listeners probably don't think it is. Ice cream. Is ice cream ultra processed?
Yes, when it comes to commercial brand that you can find in the freezer aisle of
the stuff that you don't make at home. Because everyone's making ice cream at home.
I make my own ice cream. I make Olivia homemade ice blocks and ice cream because it's really not that hard. What I'm talking about, things like the low-fat ice cream. That's definitely ultra processed.
Okay.
So I think sometimes we get too creative as a human being when it comes to wanting to eat our cake and have it too. You can't have all of this flavor and texture, but want it to be low calorie. So the reason why ultra processed became a thing is because when you still want to eat your mayonnaise, the same way that mayonnaise should taste, feel, and perform in food, but you don't want the fat, you don't want the oil. Mayonnaise is 50% oil. It's an emulsion of oil and vinegar and egg yolk and spices. When you take 50% of the ingredient that makes up this fantastic sauce or condiment, you have to replace it with something. You replace it with water, but obviously water doesn't behave the same way as oil and fat would. So you start adding thickener, you start adding stabilizer, and before you know it, you build something that resembles the real food, and you call it healthier because it's low in fat, but as a matter of fact, it's full of chemicals. The same thing with butter and margarine, for example. Margarine took hold of not only Australian, but basically the Western diet because people think that it's low in saturated fat and therefore it's healthier for you because of the war on fat.
Isn't it made of vegetable oil?
It is made from vegetable oil with a lot of additives because vegetable oil is basically, the difference between oil and fat is that oil is liquid at room temperature and fat is solid at room temperature. To make oil into something solid at room temperature, you need to put additives. And that is the issue. We want to be healthier. Unfortunately, in the process of us pursuing the health, we are poisoning our body.
So I'm having an epiphany here. Are all low-fat foods ultra-processed? Is that what you're saying?
Manufacture low-fat food, they are ultra-processed.
Wow. Every single one of them?
Every single one of them. Because you can't have, again, you can't have...
Are they all bad for you?
They are bad for you.
Because what low-fat foods are not good for you?
Yes, because it messes up with your hunger and fullness hormonal signaling system. When you eat fat and oil, that helps your gut to communicate to your brain that you are full to stop eating. But when you are eating something that is artificially low fat, so if you have low fat mayonnaise, for example, or low sugar or
is this controversial?
Sugar, it is not controversial. I don't think it should be controversial because this is scientifically true. When you eat something with artificial sweetener, it has 0 calorie. However, your brain does not get the same amount of fulfillment, and therefore you eat more, you crave more, and the very simple fact that your body loses control of the portion of what you should eat is very alarming.
Okay, so if I'm making everything at home like you do, apparently, is any of that ultra processed? Like if I'm making burgers and I'm putting some salt in, and
it's not,
and that it's not,
because
but I'm processing it.
Remember the 3 criteria of ultra processed? It has to be mass produced.
But mass producing, is that a fair one? I mean, mass producing food is the reason why we have the standard of living that we have, isn't it?
No, I totally agree. That's why you have to fulfill 2 out of 3 to be ultra processed food. If it's mass produced,
there's nothing wrong with
mass produced. Without mass production of rice, the entire population of Southeast Asia will go into starvation mode.
Absolutely.
Without the mass production of wheat, you guys don't have bread for through the 1950s and 1960s post World War II. Bread is probably the best example when it comes to processed food and ultra processed food.
Really?
So just because bread is bread doesn't mean that all breads are the same. So the sandwich slices, the toast, the loaf of toast that you get from the supermarket, that is ultra processed foods. However, if you go to a bakery that sells sourdough, that's processed food. The difference is that I make bread myself, and I make really, really good loaf of bread, and I have a really good recipe. Go to askdrvincent.com. The difference is that I use wheat flour, yeast, water, and salt flakes. There are only 4 ingredients in my bread recipe. The next time you're in the supermarket, turn your loaf of bread around, and I bet you it's a paragraph, if not 2, in terms of the addition.
And why do they have those ingredients in there?
Because they want uniformity. They want cheap production costs. Because wheat wheat flour is probably the most expensive input when it comes to making bread. But to achieve uniformity, you put stabilizer and emulsifier. To achieve the softer crumb or softer texture that lasts for long, you add additives. To achieve longer shelf life in the room temperature, you add preservative. And not only that, have you ever wondered why every single loaf of bread in the supermarket look all the same in terms of color? That's because they put something to make the color uniform. So this is something that is an issue from both sides. Manufacturers are doing that because they know consumers are expecting that. But on the other hand, we didn't expect that to begin with. Manufacturers told us that this is a better option for you. If your food items don't look great, it's not good for you, which is absolutely untrue.
But everyone would be love probably to be buying like artisanal sourdough all the time, but it's really, really expensive. Whereas
make it yourself, 80 cents per loaf, and it takes zero time when it comes to kneading. It's no need to knead. You basically dump in all the ingredients, cover it up. You can wait for 12 hours. You can wait for 3 hours. All of these variations are on
This is on your website thing. I haven't even had a look. I've got to try this.
It's very, very easy. It's a lot more gentler to your system. When I say system, I mean your gut and intestinal lining. And this is something that a lot of people can actually relate. I have a lot of friends who were gluten intolerant in Australia, or even my American friends, when they visited Europe, suddenly they can eat bread and pasta there.
Yeah, it's such high quality over there. Well, it's just got less additives in it. Is
exactly.
That okay?
And the quality of I don't know if you ever noticed the different color when it comes to dried pasta. The cheaper dried pasta tend to be yellow, and the more expensive one, the higher quality pasta, is actually white. And that's because of the drying process. The yellower pasta, it means that it's been dried very fast. Whereas the whiter in color one, or uniform and a little bit blotchy, they are being dried slowly. So the time that it takes for it to dry actually breaks down some of these anti-nutrients in the dough, that makes it easier for our body to digest compared to the one that's fast processed.
Okay, so if we're talking, sensibly, we're not going over to the wacky side of only eating raw food and all that sort of stuff.
No, we're not. And
I don't know where people even get that.
Again, because, I have to say that
cave people didn't live after about 25 years old. It was
exactly
going all raw diets. Crazy. How much of our diet is it okay for ultra processed foods to kind of make up? And then processed foods and then raw foods. What's your proportions? What are your proportions?
I think when it comes to making a proportion, I don't have a degree and experience in public health. Although through the work of Associate Professor Mark Lucock, we actually did help to encourage the change when it comes to folic acid and folate supplementation and fortification in Australia, which at that time I was still a first year student in my bachelor degree. So I was really, really proud that as someone who came to Australia as an international student, I helped affect positive changes in our country's health. But with that disclaimer, what I'm going to say may not be for you, but it has worked for me. It has worked with many, many people when it comes to our clients and customers. 80-20. 20% of what you eat and what you do when it comes to health, you can be a little bit naughty. You can consume alcohol in moderation. You can consume sugar food in moderation. You can consume ultra processed food in moderation, as long as 80% of your diet is relatively healthy. When I say relatively healthy, I don't mean that you have to home cook and homemade 80% of your diet. What I'm saying is that instead of using ham in your in your sandwich for your lunch every day, maybe buy roast chicken or barbecue chicken. Just as easy. You don't have to cook it, but it's a lot healthier compared to the processed meat. Number two, instead of buying, ultra processed cheese, you can slice your own cheese. You can grate your own cheese, because when you buy cheese in the sliced form or in the grated form, they add at least sodium, if not more, which is more salt, if not any other additives to the product to make sure that it lasts longer. Because when you slice meat or cheese, when you shred meat or cheese, they have more surface area. It means that they lose moisture faster, they get exposed to oxygen faster, which means that they have to put more preservatives to protect the end product. So spend the extra 10 minutes to slice your own cheese. It's not that hard.
So is it, but that actually is my next question, because it's like everyone does their shopping in the supermarket usually. Is it hard to just buy or get 80% of your basket to be processed and raw foods rather than ultra processed food? Is that a difficult thing to do?
I don't think so, because you need to be smart about that. And when I said you need to be smart about that, I'm not saying it condescendingly. Let me share this. So I used to think that fresh fruit and vegetables are king. They are the first grade and the gold standard when it comes to your fruit and vegetables quality. I was wrong, because learning about science, food, and nutrition, I know that frozen corn kernels, frozen blueberries, frozen raspberries are just as nutritious, and for some, in some situation, they can actually be more nutritious compared to if you buy fresh. Because when you buy fresh, you probably don't eat it right away. You probably wait 3 days or 5 days, or sometimes 1 week before you actually eat your fresh produce. And along this time, the nutritional values depreciates. So what I'm saying is that if you're making cheats and tricks codes when you do your shoppings, it can be easy, it can be sustainable, and it can be affordable. We only buy our green beans in the frozen form, for example. Technology has gone so advanced when it comes to preserving the texture, preserving the nutritional value, and the color. We buy our corn kernels either frozen or in can. That's all fine. Can and frozen.
So all those canned goods, I mean, they're just processed foods. They're not
ultra processed.
They're not ultra processed. Okay.
They're not ultra processed. So the other aspect of ultra processed food is usually when you buy your ham being vacuum packed, because they need to brine it and achieve that flavor without the age. It means that they come in contact for a prolonged amount of time with plastic. And we all know that microplastics are the thing now, not because it's topical. It is because we just realized that we all carry plastics in our body.
We're polluting ourselves. Because anyway, we're probably coming to the end of the podcast.
Yes, and I just want to say one thing, that it is really important to know, and Christian mentioned it really, really earlier on our on this podcast, on this episode, is that nobody likes to be preached to. Nobody likes to be lectured. Nobody likes to be told what to do. And that is not the aim of this podcast today, or in any episode of our podcast. I do believe that when people know better, they do better. When people know more information, they make smarter choices. And you can't blame people for making poor decisions when it comes to their health if they don't know the information, the health information. And unfortunately, nowadays, it's a conundrum, because you get really easy access to information, but at the same time, you don't know if the information can be trusted, scientifically based, or just for hype. So I hope that in the little things that we do, we can help you to understand better about your body, what you put into it, and how you function every day. And if one person is making positive changes to their health, that's a win for us. On that note, I'm Dr. Vincent, and my co-host,
Christian.
Bid you adieu. And we will see you next week. Bye-bye.